All right, let's talk about something that's, well, it's kind of weird when you think about it. We all say we want the truth, right? But the moment it shows up at our door, most of us pretend we're not home. Today, we're going to get into why our brains are actually hardwired to do that, to resist reality, and, more importantly, how you can break free.
So let's just start with this central question right out of the gate. I mean, if truth is supposed to be this incredible tool for growth and finding real solutions, why does it seem like most people are sprinting in the opposite direction? Seriously, once you start noticing this pattern, you see it everywhere.
You see this all the time, right? Somebody has a weird ache or a symptom they know they should probably get checked out, but they just don't. They put it off for weeks, months, even years. And why? Because for a little while, the comfort of not knowing feels way safer than the potential pain of finding out the truth. Or how about this one? A person knows, deep down, that the relationship is just draining the life out of them, that it's just not working. But actually facing that truth, that means a messy breakup, feeling lonely, stepping into a future that's totally uncertain. So what do? They stay. They choose a misery they know over a happiness they don't. And of course, there's the big one. Millions and millions of people get up every single morning to go to a job that just crushes their spirit a little bit more each day. The truth is screaming at them, you're on the wrong path. But admitting that would mean having to make a terrifying, massive change. The pattern is crystal clear. We will almost always pick short-term comfort, even if it means sacrificing long-term truth. So what is going on here? Is everybody just weak or cowardly? Nope, not at all. It's actually much deeper than that. This resistance to reality, it's a feature, not a bug in our brain's ancient software. So let's pull back the curtain on the mind's built-in defense system. And here is the really wild part. Your brain's number one job for thousands and thousands of years wasn't to be correct. It was to keep you alive. Think about it. Back in our tribal days, fitting in with the group was everything. If you started questioning the tribe's beliefs or the leader, you could get kicked out. And getting kicked out meant you were on your own, which was basically a death sentence. So our brains learned a very simple, very powerful rule. Staying with the group is safer than being right. And that survival instinct, it creates this powerful mental shortcut we all have, called confirmation bias. Your brain basically acts like a detective that's been hired to prove a case it already believes is true. So if you think you're unlucky, your brain will collect every piece of evidence of bad luck and totally ignore all the good things that happen. It literally filters reality to protect what you already think. And this is where things get personal. This is where the ego steps onto the stage. See, your ego is just the story you tell yourself about who you are. So when some new piece of truth comes along and says, hey, that thing you believe, it's not actually correct. Your ego doesn't just hear a simple correction. Oh no, it hears a direct attack on who you are. To the ego, you made a mistake sounds exactly like you are a mistake. This is precisely why ancient thinkers like Socrates were so big on humility. The ego craves being right. It demands certainty. But real wisdom, actual growth, it comes from the complete opposite place. It comes from being able to say, you know what? I might be wrong about this. There's probably more to learn. And if you look at the brain itself, it gets even crazier. When a piece of information comes along that deeply challenges your identity or your worldview, your brain's little alarm system, the amygdala, it just goes nuts. It literally cannot tell the difference between a tiger in the grass and an idea that threatens your ego. It triggers the exact same fight or flight response. You get flooded with emotion, not logic. Okay, so our brains are basically wired to pick comfort. That's the factory default setting. But what's the real cost? What's the price we pay for living inside that safe little bubble? Well, it turns out the long-term cost of short-term comfort is incredibly, devastatingly high. See, the thing is, avoiding a hard truth doesn't make it go away. It's like pouring fertilizer on it. That little health issue you ignore doesn't just heal itself, it gets worse. Those financial problems you sweep under the rug don't disappear, they balloon into massive debt. And that emotional wound you refuse to look at, it doesn't just fade, it festers and turns into real trauma. The philosopher Nietzsche really just hit the nail on the head with this one. We build these illusions around ourselves, right? That our job will magically get better, that the relationship is fine, that our bad habits aren't really a problem. They're like these cozy blankets. But the truth is a disruptive force. It yanks the blanket off and forces you to face the cold, hard reality. So here's a way to think about it that really sticks. Every single time you choose a comfortable lie over a difficult truth, you're not getting away with anything. You are taking out a loan from your future self, a loan with incredibly high interest. And that debt, it always comes due. All right, so that was the problem, and it sounds pretty bleak, I know. But here's the good news. You are not a prisoner to these habits. You can absolutely override these default settings. So now, let's get practical. Let's walk through a 3-step guide to actually training yourself to become a truth seeker. Here's the playbook. First, you have to practice what I call radical self-honesty. Ask yourself the tough questions, like, what am I pretending not to know right now? Second, you have to consciously separate your ego from your beliefs. Your ideas are not you. They're just tools, and they can be upgraded. And third, and this is the one almost nobody does, actively look for evidence that proves you wrong. I'm telling you, this one habit is a legitimate superpower. And this right here, this is maybe the single most important mental switch you can flip. We're taught our whole lives that being wrong is a sign of failure, that it means you're dumb. But that's completely backward. Every time you discover that you were wrong about something, you haven't failed. You've just successfully found an error in your thinking. You've become less wrong. That is the literal definition of learning and progress. Let's use a metaphor to wrap this all up because it illustrates the payoff so perfectly. Imagine your life as a ship at sea. All your feelings, your fears, your comfortable habits, those are just the winds and the currents. They can push you all over the place. But the truth is your compass. Now, sometimes that compass might point you directly into a storm you'd rather avoid, but it is the only thing that actually points toward your true destination. If you ignore it, you're not sailing anymore. You're just drifting. So when you boil it all down, it really comes to this one choice. You can take the path of avoiding the truth. It offers some temporary comfort, sure, but it ultimately leads to stagnation, to a life of quiet regret. Or you can take the path of seeking the truth. It's often uncomfortable, no doubt about it, but it is the only path that leads to real clarity, to genuine freedom, and to profound transformation. The choice, as always, is yours. Which one will you pick?